shocking to me that I could make any changes in my health. I had a lot of health problems, and they had started pretty early in my life. When I was 5, I had my first surgery, so I'll just put it that way. And I had, by the time I was an adult, been dealing with PCOS, hypothyroidism, migraines, chronic depression, IBS, and just intractable weight problems, right? All of that was something I just assumed was part of my life journey and was not something I could affect. And on my keto journey, these things just started to get fixed. And it was miraculous, and I was very excited about it, but it was like, it took me a while to figure out, and I had to learn, right, just like we learn at these conferences, why these things were getting fixed. Because at first I thought it was just about the weight loss. And that and I don't think we can really debate this too much. That being obese, so this slide is showing you this is a mortality curve. So the hazard ratio, you can think of a hazard ratio like if it's 1, it's like no hazard ratio means what's the probability of dying. So this is a hazard ratio of your mortality. And so being below that dotted line, you're less likely to die. And the higher you are, the more likely you are to die. So that's how you read this slide. And you can see as we enter this obese category, by the way, there's no such thing as morbid obesity anymore. Did you guys know that? It's class 1, class 2, class 3, and class 4. So you know they changed the names. So in this box here, we've got the different classes of obesity. And you can see by the time you get to class 4, which is going to go the next class off the chart, you're over 2 times as likely to die of all causes. And do you know that's equal to being like a 40 cigarette a day smoker? So it's a pretty high hazard ratio of all-cause mortality. And so it's not really questionable that being very obese will have health consequences. And on that, what's nice is that early weight loss for a lot of people, moving from extreme obesity to being overweight, it tends to be sort of a lot of benefit, not as hard as some other types of weight loss can be. But then you get into this arena here where a lot of people end up, and I don't know if this, again, is ringing a bell with some of you, but the stall, the place where you might stop seeing weight loss, you might even see a little weight gain, and then you get into the despair zone. Because you might not be all that far from where your goal weight, whatever that magic number you decided is gonna be your goal, but all of a sudden in this place where you've accomplished so much, you can forget all about all of the good things that have come before and only see the hill that stands in front of you, which is just a baby hill, not like the giant mountain we've already scaled. But you can often feel, I find, and my clients have found in this place, which they may, honestly, spend the rest of their life in, right? And hating it, and hating themselves, and forgetting all the good that they've done. And I think part of that is because we don't have a great perspective on this. Oh, by the way, this place in the despair zone is where you get to meet the 4 horsemen of the weight loss apocalypse. Right? I think some of us can identify with these. I call it the drift. That's when you sort of just drift your way off course, right? You've got the flail and bounce. The flail and bounce, I won't demonstrate. It's not like the swoop. It's that place where you're like, carnivore, no. Vegan keto, no. Like you're doing a new thing every day and not giving it enough time to actually work. There's the double down paralysis, and the destroyer of worlds, the F it, right? this isn't working, F it. I'm getting the bun on the burger and the fries, right? Because you kind of forget, again, like how far you've come to this point, but you are back in that mindset of unacceptability because you aren't exactly where you decided that you thought you should be. Now sometimes these, there was text on that, but it's not happening. Sometimes the destroyer of worlds, they bring their cousins. They're just very, very bad ideas. And this happens when weight becomes your everything. We often lose sight of who we can be and what we can accomplish and what it really means to be healthy. I'm going to give you a prime example of one of these things, these cousins, the bad idea cousins that might come on your journey. Now this is an obvious one, and one maybe your mom did. Smoking to keep the weight off. Right? Like, we can all acknowledge, this is not a good choice for your health. You'll weigh less, but you'll die faster. Right? That's not the best. By the way, this combination, the cigarette and the coffee cup, it is like watching my mom in childhood, right? It is the thing, drinking coffee all day and smoking. Smoking and drinking coffee in place of food. Both are appetite suppressants. It is absolutely true. Only one of them is a good idea. It's not the smoking. And so yeah, we know the downside of that outweighs any benefit. How about this one? Bad ideas when we focus on weight loss too much. Only thinking about what you eat. Who here is guilty of this at some point on their journey? Only thinking about what they eat being important, right? It's only part of the puzzle. I know that's depressing because when you're a food addict, anything with food is kind of interesting, even like reducing it in weird ways, but you still get to focus on food all the time. And one of the things that I found in my programs is that a lot of people, I ask them, how many steps do you get in a day? And if you don't know, why don't you track them for a while? Do you know that, you probably don't know, but I know now, is 2,000 a day was about the average I was getting from people. 2,000 steps a day. That is more sedentary than the rules for, like if you look up what are the number of steps to be considered sedentary, it's double that. So I don't know that they need to invent a new category that is more sedentary. Maybe it's like prone, right? Lounging, right? But that would where we would fall. So you're not even getting sort of what they consider just having a life activity level. I'm not trying to insult anybody in this room. I resemble everything I'm talking about, okay? So don't feel, it's like a kettle right here. And this slide is from Herman Ponzer, who did a study on metabolic rates, right? And this is for total daily energy expenditure. And so what you see here on this slide is the little dots, lots of little dots about people's daily energy expenditure. So how much in terms of calories you have to feed them to maintain their weight. And I put a little green box around the center where you've got a person who has about as much lean mass as I do. So I'm in the green box. And you can see on the scatter plot, the lowest in maintenance calories for somebody, 1,200 there. The highest, 5,000. Same muscle mass. So like genetically fairly similar in terms of the size, bones, and all that. But there can be such an enormous range. And so I put this up because if you think it's just about food, this is going to take you out at the knees, right? Because there's only so much you can manipulate food. But there's a lot of other things in your life, like how much activity, how much exercise, what are you doing? It's gonna have a high impact on what you can eat. Oops. Another really bad idea for weight loss, right? Liposuction. You will weigh less, you will be smaller, you will be less metabolically fit, right? So I'm just going through things not to do, right? Other things that bad ideas people do to try and fight the scale. They might restrict water, sodium, and good for you things like creatine. I'm going to pause for a moment and talk about creatine, shall I? I will. Because creatine is a supplement that is really beneficial, and for a lot of people, the reason that it's on this slide is it puts water into your muscles. And what happens when you add water to your muscles? You weigh a couple of pounds more on the scale. And so I have people that I've worked with who said, no, I won't take that because I have a weigh-in and I want to weigh a little less. And I'm like, but it's good for you, right? No, I can't do it because I want to hit this number, right? It's like, well, nobody sees the number, but creatine, I'm just going to stop and say, it's not just for weightlifters. A lot of people think it's only for bodybuilders. It's been shown to have neuroprotective effects against falls. So for elderly people or people who are at risk of falling, so that's anyone who's walking around, it can be very protective. It can also be protective against depression. So if you're somebody that struggles a lot with depression, it seems to be really important for brain health. So just a little plug for creatine. So the answer to that is water weight is not fat. So if you worry about water weight issues, you're probably worrying about the wrong thing. Another stupid thing that people do when they're trying to make the scale number be a certain number is they restrict protein. Protein is super important. If you undereat protein, you're going to have some problems. It is literally used for every single cell in your body. It's going to help with skeletal muscle, with bone health, with your hormones, with your synapses, like every single part of your body needs protein. The other dumb thing people do is they don't lift weights. Because when you start lifting weights, the scale goes up. And that is mentally very taxing for some people who've spent their life worried about what the scale says. But if you want to have good blood sugar, if you want to avoid sarcopenia, if you want to stay active, if you want to have a healthy brain, if you want to have good cognition, and you want to live to a very old age, you're probably going to want to do some resistance training. The other dumb thing people do is extreme caloric restriction, which invariably leads to binging, which is also not helpful for weight loss. This is going to be a controversial one. Extreme fasting. Why is extreme fasting a problem? Now, I'm not saying fasting in all circumstances is a problem, but one of the problems in certain arenas is if you're somebody who's not like class 2, 3, and 4 obese, your body doesn't have the same protection mechanisms around your muscles. So if you're relatively lean and you fast a lot, you're going to get into problems of frailty. Because here's the thing for all of us in our 30s, 40s, and 50s, the piper is not yet ready to be paid. The things you're doing now in middle age, they will come due in your 70s, 80s, and 90s.